Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. The idea that humans could fire their weapons never crossed Captain Stronit's mind as the Void Traveler, the most advanced ITIL ship ever constructed, approached the human vessel in stealth mode. His goal was to showcase the new ship's features to his crew while enjoying a laugh at the primitive human craft before destroying it. The bridge of the Void Traveler existed in perfect silence, unmarred by the persistent drone of machinery that plagued older vessels. No screens adorned the circular chamber. No holographic interfaces projected their garish light into the dimly lit space. Instead, each station connected directly to its officer through neural implants, creating an intimate bond between ship and crew that no primitive technology could replicate. The mental links allowed for instantaneous data transfer, unhindered by clumsy verbal communication or visual displays. The only sound that broke the reverent silence were the soft footfalls of officers moving between stations and the gentle rhythm of breathing. A reminder that despite their technological superiority, the ITIL remained biological beings. Captain Stronit found comfort in these subtle sounds, a counterpoint to the perfect stillness that surrounded them. The ship's environmental systems maintained optimal temperature and humidity without the vulgar noise of ventilation systems. Power flowed through conduits with such perfect smoothness that required no cooling fans or energy discharge. Stronit couldn't help but compare his own imposing physique to the frames of his crew as they prepared for the approach. His yellow skin gleamed under the gentle ambient lighting, the characteristic black dots that adorned his face arranged in the distinctive pattern of high-caste military lineage. He ran a four-fingered hand over his smooth, hairless head, feeling the twin horns that protruded from his forehead. Shorter than most, but thicker and more symmetrical, a point of personal pride. His green eyes, with their vertical pupils and reflective quality, swept across the bridge, noting the subtle differences between himself and his subordinates. Navigator Celix possessed the slender build typical of those who spent their lives interfacing with navigation systems, her yellow skin a shade paler than his, her facial dots forming subtle curves that spoke of a lineage from the southern provinces. Arms Officer Strier presented a more pronounced contrast, his frame nearly as broad as Stronit's, though lacking the perfect proportions that the captain had maintained through rigorous physical conditioning. Strier's horns curved slightly outward, a minor imperfection that Stronit noted, feeling a mixture of sympathy and quiet superiority. Stronit felt a surge of pride, not just in his own physical form, but in what it represented. The ITIL had evolved beyond the weakness of flesh, incorporating technology that enhanced their natural abilities, yet they maintained the physical discipline that had elevated them above the lesser species of the galaxy. Humans, with their soft bodies and dull senses, could never achieve such perfect union of biological excellence and technological mastery.
Navigator, match his speed with the human vessel,
Stronit ordered, his deep voice barely above a whisper in the silent bridge. "Matching speed, Captain," Celix responded, her mental commands flowing through her neural links to adjust the ship's velocity. The crew experienced the approach through the tactical interface projected directly into their minds, a virtual reality construction that allowed them to perceive their position relative to the human ship from any angle or perspective. Stronit chose a view that positioned them seemingly above and behind the Void Traveler, providing a panoramic perspective of both vessels against the backdrop of distant stars.
Notice how the gravitational drive leaves no detectable energy signature,
Stronit remarked, addressing the entire bridge crew but focusing his attention on Celix.
The previous generation required constant energy-dampening fields to mask their approach. The Void Traveler simply doesn't emit anything to detect.
The old Strider would have announced our arrival with its radiation signature alone, Serlix commented, her hands moving through the air, manipulating controls only she could see. Not that I think the humans could have detected it.
Primitive times,
Stronit agreed with a dismissive gesture.
The humans still rely on reaction drives, superheated gas expelled from their vessels like waste from a digestive system.
A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew, subtle smiles and quiet huffs of derision, acknowledging the captain's metaphor.
Are they truly blind to all presence, Captain?
Asked Strier from his weapons station, his mental interface displaying target acquisition data that remained dormant for now.
Completely,
Stronit assured him.
Their sensors rely on electromagnetic radiation and particle detection, both rendered useless by our adaptive hull. We could orbit their vessel at arm's length, and they would detect nothing more than a slight gravitational anomaly, which their primitive instruments is not good enough to detect.
The virtual display shifted, rendering the human vessel in greater detail as they closed the distance. It appeared ungainly to Ittle's sensibilities, a central spindle surrounded by modules connected by struts and passage tubes, designed with function over form in a way that betrayed its designer's limited imagination.
The humans call this class of vessel a dreadnought,
Stronit informed his crew, unable to keep the contempt from his voice.
They consider it the pinnacle of their military achievement.
It looks like a construction scaffold,
observed a junior officer from the engineering station, earning appreciative chuckles from nearby crew members. As the Void Traveler moved into position directly above the human ship, the scale difference became apparent. The Ittle vessel dwarfed the human craft, its sleek, biometric hull extending nearly twice the length of the human dreadnought. Where the human ship bristled with external components and exposed mechanisms, the Void Traveler presented an uninterrupted, curved surface that crested a field that redirected light. "Approach complete," Serlix announced. "We are maintaining perfect relative position, 500 meters above their dorsal surface." Stronit gazed at the virtual representation of their position, satisfaction evident in his posture.
"And they remain unaware?"
"Their sensor arrays continue routine sweep patterns,"
confirmed the communications officer.
"No alert status detected in their transmission protocols."
A collective amusement rippled through the bridge crew, some openly laughing, others shaking their heads in disbelief at the human's blindness. Stronit allowed himself a moment of smug satisfaction. The Void Traveler represented the culmination of Ittle technological development, centuries ahead of anything humans could conceive.
"Navigator, initiate stealth scan of the human vessel,"
Stronit ordered, settling into his command position at the center of the bridge.
"Let's see what primitive weapons they're carrying. For academic interest, of course."
"Initiating scan, Captain,"
Serlix responded, her slender fingers gently reaching for the controls, not a hint of rush in her movements. "Passive energy detection first, to avoid any possibility of detection." The virtual display shifted, highlighting the human ship's energy emissions in virtual color overlays that spread through the crew's shared perception. Power signatures were highlighted through the vessel's structure, concentrating on what appeared to be a central reactor. "Interesting," Serlix murmured, her curiosity momentarily overcoming her disdain. "Their power generation is more concentrated than I expected."
"What are we looking at?"
Stronit inquired, moving through the virtual display to observe the energy patterns from different angles. "It appears to be either fusion or fission-based," Serlix reported, her mental interface extracting detailed analysis from the scanned data. "Crude, but reasonably effective for their technological level. They're channeling significant power to these structures along the vessel's flanks." The display highlighted a series of massive cylindrical structures integrated into the human ship's hull. They extended nearly a third of the vessel's length, connected to power conduits that transferred high amounts of energy.
Weapon systems,
Strier suggested, his attention focused on the structures. Most likely, Serlix agreed, but I'm not detecting energy weapons. No laser-focusing chambers, no plasma containment fields. Stronit frowned, puzzled by the unfamiliar configuration.
Enhance the structural scan. What are we looking at?
The display shifted again, peeling away the outer hull of the human vessel to reveal the internal structure of the cylindrical components. Long, hollow tubes surrounded by magnetic coils and power distribution systems became visible in the mental projection. They appear to be launching tubes, Serlix said slowly, confusion evident in her voice. But not missile silos? They're linear accelerators, magnetic propulsion systems. Realization dawned on Stier's face.
Kinetic weapons? They're using magnetically accelerated projectiles.
A moment of silence fell across the bridge, followed by a wave of incredulous laughter that began with Stronit and spread to the rest of the crew.
Kinetic weapons? They think they can throw rocks at us?
Stronit's laughter echoed in the quiet bridge.
I knew humans were primitive, but this exceeds my expectations. To be fair, Captain,
Strier said, struggling to maintain his professional demeanor through his amusement.
At sufficient velocity, even a small mass could cause significant damage. To an unshielded vessel, perhaps,
Stronit conceded, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes.
But against our energy barriers, they might as well be using slingshots.
The power requirements for these accelerators must be substantial, Serlix noted, still studying the scan data. Their reactor, which I can now confirm is fusion-based, seems dedicated primarily to powering these weapons.
Such a waste of energy,
Stronit remarked, shaking his head.
While we can operate for years on our antimatter core, only activating it for major power requirements, our battery systems alone could power all ship functions for weeks.
Their reactor technology is particularly old, agreed the engineering officer. I estimate their fuel consumption rate at nearly 10 times what an equivalent ITIL system would require. The crew continued their analysis, pointing out flaws and inefficiencies in the human design with the superiority of advanced beings examining primitive artifacts. The railgun system, impressive by human standards, represented technology the ITIL had abandoned centuries ago in favor of directed energy weapons and gravitational manipulation.
Expand the scan,
Stronit ordered, his curiosity piqued by the discovery.
Let's see what other surprises our primitive friends might have.
Expanding scan perimeters, Captain, Serlix acknowledged, directing the ship's sensors to penetrate deeper into the human vessel. The virtual display expanded, revealing more of the internal structures and systems of the human dreadnought. New data flooded into the shared perception space, highlighting weapon emplacements and defensive systems.
They appear to have missile launch systems as well,
Strier reported, designating various points of the human ship where ordnance was stored.
Multiple launch tubes along the lateral hull sections. Can we determine the warhead types?
Stronit inquired, moving through the virtual space to examine the missile bays more closely.
Based on radiation signatures and containment protocols, nuclear fission,
Strier confirmed, after a moment of analysis.
Primitive but potentially destructive. Their delivery systems rely on chemical propellants, reaction drives similar to their main engines.
Another wave of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Nuclear weapons represented a technological step that the ITIL had moved beyond ages ago. Their destructive potential rendered obsolete by advanced shielding and point defense systems.
Run a combat simulation,
Stronit ordered, settling back into his command position.
Let's see how our theoretical engagement would play out.
Strier nodded, his mental commands initiating a complex predictive algorithm that incorporated both vessels' capabilities into a simulated battle scenario. The virtual display shifted, presenting a stylized representation of both ships facing off against each other. In the simulation, the human vessel detected the Void Traveler and immediately brought its weapons to bear, launching a salvo of nuclear missiles while powering up its railgun systems. The simulated ITIL vessel's point defense lasers activated automatically, detonating the missiles at safe distances while its shields absorbed the kinetic impacts from railgun projectiles with minimal energy expenditure. The counterattack came in the form of precisely targeted energy beams that bypassed the human vessel's armor and hitting the core, destroying the ship entirely. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds in the simulation.
Even assuming their targeting systems could lock on to us despite our stealth capabilities, and even granting them unusually effective interceptors and drone support,
Stray concluded,
the outcome remains the same. Our technological advantage is simply too great.
Run it again with the different parameters, Stronit suggested.
Assume they detect us earlier and have time to prepare.
Stray complied, adjusting the simulation to give the human vessel advanced warning and optimal positioning. The result hardly changed. The engagement lasted slightly longer, but the outcome remained inevitable. After 10 variations of the simulation, each granting the humans increasingly favorable conditions, the Void Traveler emerged victorious in every scenario.
Their primary vulnerability is their complete lack of energy shielding,
Stray observed, highlighting the relevant weaknesses in the simulation.
Their hull armor might withstand micrometeoroid impacts and minor weapons fire, but our lasers would cut through it like solar radiation through vacuum.
Could they generate shields with their current power systems?
Stronit asked, genuinely curious about the limitations of human technology.
Unlikely,
responded the engineering officer.
Even if they understood the principles, their fusion reactor doesn't produce the correct energy type or quality for effective shielding. They would need to fundamentally redesign their power generation systems.
Laughter spread through the bridge again, a shared acknowledgement of their overwhelming superiority. Stronit felt a surge of pride in his vessel and his species, the culmination of evolutionary and technological development that placed them so far above the struggling humans. As the amusement subsided, a new idea formed in Stronit's mind.
Communications,
he called, addressing the officer responsible for external transmissions.
Do we have the capability to contact the human vessel without giving away our position?
Communications officer Zosarix straightened at his station, his lean frame and elongated facial features marking him as distinctive even among the ITIL crew. The dots on his yellow skin formed intricate patterns around his mouth and ears, signifying his specialized sensory training.
Certainly, Captain,
Zosarix confirmed, a note of surprise in his voice.
Their communication systems are primitive but well documented. We can easily interface with their protocols.
Excellent,
Stronit said, a mischievous gleam in his vertical pupilled eyes.
I propose a small entertainment for the crew. Let's contact our human friends. Show them who's been watching them all this time.
Zosarix's expression brightened, his professional demeanor momentarily forgotten in excitement.
Communications rarely gets to demonstrate our capabilities, Captain. This would be an excellent opportunity.
Proceed, then,
Stronit ordered, settling comfortably into his command position.
Establish visual contact with the bridge.
Initiating contact,
Zosarix confirmed, his hand moving through the invisible interface of his mental link.
Adapting to their communication protocols, establishing connection.
In their shared mental space, the crew watched as a connection formed with the human vessel. A visual feed appeared, showing the interior of the human bridge, a cluttered, chaotic space filled with physical control interfaces and display screens that seemed archaic to ITIL sensibilities. Humans moved between stations, unaware that they were being observed.
"Connection established," Sozarix announced. "Their system has accepted our communication request."
The virtual display showed a human face appearing on what must have been their communication screen, a male with the characteristic hairless face of their command structure, wearing a dark uniform adorned with symbolic markers of authority.
"This is Captain Logan of the UES Determination," the human said, his expression revealing surprise and confusion. "Unidentified vessel, please identify."
Stronit nodded to Sozarix, who immediately terminated the connection. The bridge erupted in laughter, imagining the bewildered expression the human must have shown when the transmission cut off.
"Just imagine his face!" one of the junior officers exclaimed. "He had no idea what was happening."
"Let's do it again," Stronit suggested, thoroughly enjoying the entertainment.
"But this time, don't transmit any visual data from our end."
Sozarix nodded, initiating a second connection. This time, when the human captain appeared, looking even more confused than before, he was met with a blank transmission, audio-enabled but no visual feed.
"This is Captain Smith,"
the human said again, his tone more cautious.
"We're experiencing technical difficulties with your transmission. Please identify yourself and state your intentions."
After allowing the human to continue his attempts at communication for several moments, Stronit signaled Sozarix to terminate the connection again. The bridge crew's amusement grew, several officers struggling to maintain their composure at the bewildered reactions of the primitive beings.
"One more time,"
Stronit decided, fully immersed in the game.
"This time, establish full communications. When they respond, send them our combat simulation data, and let them see exactly what will happen when we test our weapons against them."
"Brilliant, Captain,"
Sozarix agreed, preparing the final transmission.
"Initiating connection now."
For the third time, the human captain appeared in their virtual display. His expression had transformed from confusion to guarded concern, the muscles in his face tense with the strain of diplomatic caution.
"This is Captain Logan of the UES Determination,"
he began again, his tone deliberately measured.
"We are on a peaceful mission and have no hostile intentions. If there are any communication issues, we are prepared to—"
At Stronit's nod, Sozarix transmitted the combat simulation data directly to the human vessel's computer systems. In their virtual display, the ITIL crew could see the moment the data appeared on the human screens. The stunned expressions, the sudden flurry of activity as officers responded to what they correctly interpreted as a threat.
"What is the meaning of this?"
the human captain demanded, his diplomatic facade cracking.
"If this is intended as some form of intimidation—"
Stronit leaned forward, about to respond with some witty remark, when the human captain abruptly terminated the connection from his end. This unexpected response momentarily silenced the bridge before sparking a new wave of amusement.
"They cut us off!" Streer exclaimed. "The audacity of these primitives!"
"What do you think they'll do now, Captain?"
asked an eager junior officer.
"Will they attempt to flee?"
"My credits are on a panicked weapons discharge,"
another officer wagered.
"They'll fire in all directions, hoping to hit something they can't see."
"I believe they'll play dead," suggested a third, using the common metaphor for the survival strategy observed in non-sentient species on garden worlds.
"Cut all power and hope the predator loses interest."
Stronit considered the possibilities, showing detachment.
"Let's observe their response. Whatever they choose, it will be entertaining."
Minutes passed as the crew watched the human vessel through their sensors. Contrary to expectations, the dreadnought maintained its course and speed, showing no external signs of panic or preparation for either flight or fight.
"No change in their engine output,"
Serlix reported after several minutes of observation.
"Their power distribution remains consistent with normal operations."
"The communication channels?"
Stronit inquired, beginning to feel slightly disappointed by the lack of reaction.
Internal communications have increased in volume,
Sozarix confirmed.
but they're not broadcasting distress signals or emergency transmissions.
More time passed, and the human's lack of visible response gradually transformed Stronit's amusement into irritation. He had expected entertainment, panic, desperate maneuvers, futile attempts at defense, but the human vessel simply continued on its previous course as if nothing had happened.
Perhaps they didn't understand the simulation,
suggested Strir, sensing the captain's growing frustration.
Their analytical capabilities might be insufficient to interpret the data properly, or they're more fatalistic than we anticipated,
Sozarix offered,
accepting their inevitable defeat without resistance.
Neither explanation satisfied Stronit, whose sense of superiority demanded acknowledgement from those he surpassed. The human's apparent indifference felt almost like an insult, a refusal to properly appreciate the overwhelming technological gap between their species.
"Enough observation,"
he finally declared, rising from his command position.
"If they won't provide us with entertainment, we'll proceed with the demonstration of our offensive capabilities."
"Weapon systems, Captain?"
Strir asked, his station already preparing for combat operations.
"Not yet,"
Stronit cautioned.
"First, let's move to a safe distance. We wouldn't want to be caught in the debris field when their vessel disintegrates."
"Navigating to recommended weapons range," Silix confirmed, her mental commands already adjusting their position relative to the human ship.
"Their hull integrity won't withstand even a minimal energy weapon discharge,"
Strir noted as he prepared the weapon systems.
"The simulation suggests catastrophic structural failure within seconds of initial impact."
Stronit nodded in satisfaction, imagining the brief, spectacular destruction of the human vessel, a final demonstration of Ital's superiority before they continued their patrol.
"Once we're at optimal range, target their primary reactor. A clean kill, quick and efficient."
The Void Traveler began to move away from the human dreadnought, maintaining stealth protocols even though they were now certain the humans had no means of detecting them. The virtual display tracked their increasing separation, countdown timers appearing in the crew's shared perception, measuring the moments until they reached weapons range. "Approaching optimal firing positions," Silix announced. 30 seconds to designated coordinates."
"Weapon systems online and standing by,"
Strir confirmed.
"Target acquisition complete."
The bridge was filled with anticipation, the earlier levity replaced by professional focus as they prepared to execute the final phase of their encounter with the human vessel. Stronit felt a twinge of disappointment that the humans had chosen such a passive response to their presence, but consoled himself with the knowledge that the upcoming destruction would provide suitable closure to the demonstration. 20 seconds to firing position, Silix updated, her voice calm and precise.
"Laser arrays charged and ready,"
Strir reported.
"Awaiting your command, Captain."
Stronit opened his mouth to acknowledge the report when Silix's posture suddenly stiffened, her attention snapping to a new data point in their virtual environment. "Captain?" she said, her voice shifting from calm professionalism to intense focus. "I'm detecting a launch from the human vessel."
"A launch?"
Stronit repeated, momentarily confused.
"What type of—"
"Missile," Silix confirmed, her hands moving rapidly through her controls. "A single projectile, nuclear signature detected. Current trajectory, intercept with our position in 28 seconds. Stronit felt a moment of disbelief as he processed the information. The humans had detected them somehow. More incredibly, they had managed to target and launch a weapon with sufficient accuracy to threaten the Void Traveler. The impossibility of it momentarily froze him in place as the countdown continued in their shared virtual space. 27 seconds, 26, 25. The laughter that had filled the bridge earlier was entirely absent now, replaced by focused attention as the crew awaited his orders. Stronit straightened, pushing aside his surprise to address the unexpected development.
"They detected us,"
he stated, the words feeling strange in his mouth.
"and they fired first?"
"Shields at full capacity, Captain," an officer reported with calm assurance. "The primitive nuclear device will be contained."
Stronit nodded, his momentary shock replaced by practiced composure.
"Intercept with lasers. No need to waste the shield integrity."
"Activating point defense system,"
Streer confirmed, his hands moving through his virtual interface in a quick sequence.
"Target locked. Firing in 3, 2, 1.
A brief surge of energy moved through the ship as a concentrated beam of coherent light lanced out from the Void Traveler's defensive array. In the shared virtual display, the crew watched as the beam intercepted the incoming missile, causing it to detonate in a brilliant flash that momentarily overwhelmed their sensors. When the visual feed re-established, the expanding cloud of superheated plasma quickly dissipated into the vacuum.
"Target neutralized,"
Streer announced, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Our position is now revealed," Celix noted, monitoring the tactical display. "The laser emission would have been detectable by their sensors." Stronit remained silent, his mind racing to understand how the humans had detected them in the first place. Around him, the bridge crew moved with increased hurry, all traces of their earlier amusement replaced by complete focus. He noted the change with mild surprise. They were responding as if facing a genuine threat rather than an inferior opponent. For a moment, he considered reopening communication with the human vessel to demand an explanation for how they had been detected, but quickly dismissed the idea. Such an inquiry would only further undermine his authority in front of the crew.
"Weapons officer,"
he commanded, his voice carrying the edge of irritation.
"target their reactor core and fire main lasers. End this engagement now."
"Target locked and main laser array charging,"
Streer responded as he prepared the weapon systems. The tactical display showed the energy building in the Void Traveler's main weapon array, a powerful concentration of destructive potential that would slice through the human's vessel's hull as easily as light passes through vacuum. The crew watched in shared anticipation, expecting the brief, decisive end to the encounter.
"Firing,"
Streer announced as the weapon discharged. The virtual display showed the concentrated beam of energy lancing out toward the human vessel, crossing the distance between the ships in an instant. But instead of the expected explosion, the beam struck the human ship's hull and disappeared. Stunned silence fell across the bridge.
"Report?"
Stronit demanded, unable to process what he had just witnessed.
"I don't understand,"
Streer admitted, reviewing the weapon system diagnostics.
"The laser fired at full capacity. It struck the target, but it didn't penetrate."
"That's impossible,"
Stronit snapped.
"Run a full diagnostic on the weapon system."
"Weapons are functioning at optimal parameters,"
Streer confirmed after a moment.
"The laser definitely fired correctly."
"Then what happened to the energy?"
Stronit demanded, his composure slipping further. Celix, who had been rapidly analyzing sensor data, spoke up. "Captain, I believe the energy was reflected."
"Reflected? By what?"
Stronit couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice.
"The hull is primitive metal alloy. It should have melted instantly."
"Initiating comprehensive scan of the human vessel's outer hull," Celix announced, directing the sensors to focus on the point where the laser had struck. The virtual display zoomed in, revealing detailed information about the human ship's external structure. As the data streamed in, the crew's shared perception filled with analytical overlays and material composition profiles. "This is..." Celix hesitated, her surprise evident. "They've coated sections of their hull with a layer of liquid metal, suspended in electromagnetic fields. The surface can shift its reflective properties in response to incoming energy.
A adaptable mirror? Stronit asked incredulously.
Essentially, yes, Celix confirmed. A dynamic, responsive mirror system. When our laser struck, the liquid metal reconfigured to match the exact frequency of our beam and reflected it safely into space.
But that's... Stronit struggled to find words. That's primitive technology, convoluted and inefficient.
Primitive, but it worked,
Strir observed quietly. Stronit's frustration mounted as he realized that the humans had not only detected them, but had prepared specific defenses against their advanced weapons. This encounter was rapidly transforming from a casual demonstration into something far more serious.
Enough of this, he declared, rising from his command position. Deploy drones and launch missiles. It's time to end this engagement decisively.
How many, Captain?
Strir asked, already preparing the launch sequences.
10 missiles and a standard drone swarm should suffice, Stronit decided. It would be shameful to waste more ammunition on primitives, regardless of their clever tricks.
Deploying now,
Strir confirmed, initiating the launch sequence. The shared virtual display showed the sleek missiles emerging from the Void Traveler's launch tubes, followed by a swarm of autonomous combat drones spreading out in attack formations. The weapons moved with perfect coordination, their trajectories calculated to overwhelm the human vessel's defenses from multiple vectors.
That will...
Stronit began, but he was interrupted by an urgent report from the tactical officer.
Captain, the human vessel is launching weapons, massive quantities. They've deployed everything at once.
The virtual display revealed a startling sight. The human dreadnought had erupted with fire, launching hundreds of missiles in rapid succession while deploying what appeared to be their own drone swarm. Simultaneously, the vessel had begun evasive maneuvers, its own predictable course now changing in ways that suggested a pre-planned battle strategy.
Strange,
Stronit breathed, watching as the human counterattack unfolded.
They couldn't have prepared this so quickly.
Without hesitation, he turned to Strir.
Matches their deployment. Launch everything we have. All missiles, all drones, full countermeasures.
Launching all offensive systems,
Strir acknowledged, his earlier confidence replaced by grim obedience. The space between the vessels transformed into a chaotic battlefield as missiles and drones from both ships engaged in a deadly dance. Explosions boomed in the vacuum as interceptors met missiles, brief flashes of destructive energy that momentarily overwhelmed the sensors. When the tactical displays cleared, an officer reported with obvious concern,
"Multiple impacts detected. Shields holding at 90%, Captain."
Stronit felt a surge of shame. Their supposedly invincible vessel had taken damage. Minor, yes, but damage nonetheless, from weapons they had dismissed as primitive and ineffective.
"What's the status of the human vessel?" he demanded.
"One moment, Captain,"
Strir responded, focusing intently on his interface.
"I'm having difficulty getting a clear reading through the residual energy interference."
After a brief pause, he reported with obvious surprise.
"The human vessel remains intact. They've sustained damage, but their primary systems appeared operational."
Before Stronit could respond, a powerful explosion rocked the Void Traveler, causing the virtual display to momentarily flicker.
"Shields at 60%,
the officer announced with alarm.
"What was that?"
Stronit demanded, struggling to maintain his composure. The tactical officer studied his readings with growing concern.
"It appears to be projectile fire from their railgun system. They must have fired while our sensors were obscured by the missile detonations."
"The projectiles?"
another officer added.
"They're not simple kinetic rounds. They appear to be some kind of atomic shell, a fusion of railgun delivery with nuclear payload."
"A weapons technology we've never developed," Celix noted with reluctant admiration. "Impractical by our standards." Stronit's pride gave way to genuine concern.
All lasers fire at will. Target their weapon systems.
Before the order could be executed, another explosion struck the Void Traveler with devastating force.
Shields at 10%, came the alarmed report. Multiple impacts detected. They must have fired several rounds in rapid succession, and they are arriving just now.
Evasive maneuvers,
Stronit ordered, the earlier contempt in his voice replaced by urgent command.
Their railgun projectiles should have limited course correction capability.
Captain,
Sozarix interrupted from the communication station.
the humans are transmitting a message.
Stronit hesitated only briefly before nodding.
Put it through.
The human captain's face appeared in their shared virtual space, his expression not one of fear or desperation, but of confidence.
Thank you for the combat simulation data you shared earlier,
the human said, his voice level and controlled.
It provided us with invaluable information about your firing patterns and positioning preferences. We were able to calibrate our sensors to focus everything in your assumed attack position. We were right, it seems.
The crew exchanged glances of stunned disbelief, the realization of their fatal error dawning simultaneously across their faces. They had provided their enemy with the exact information needed to defeat them. Before Stronit could formulate a response, a brilliant flash of light penetrated the viewports of the bridge, cutting off the human captain's transmission and overwhelming the senses of the Ital crew. In that final instant, Stronit understood. They had been defeated, not by superior technology, but by their own arrogance. The humans had used the Void Traveler's greatest strength, its technological superiority, against it, turning the ship's own advanced systems and the crew's overconfidence into weapons more devastating than any railgun or nuclear device. The light intensified, consuming the bridge and everyone within it. The Void Traveler, the most advanced Ital ship ever constructed, disappeared from existence, not with the dignified end befitting its technological achievement, but as a victim of its crew's fatal underestimation of a competent enemy. The humans had indeed fired first, and, against all expectations, they had also fired last.